Hello and welcome, everybody. It's DH Thorne coming at you live tonight on this beautiful Thursday. As always, sorry about running late tonight. My wonderful, illustrious guest and I had technical difficulties primarily, and a lot of it was my fault because I showed up late, so I couldn't bug check. We couldn't do everything the way we like to do. But he's here with us now. This is Robert from Typical Skeptic Podcast. This guy is sort of like an Art Bell. Right? Would you agree that's a fair comparison?
I like to compare myself to Art Bell. I'm trying to leave a legacy behind like him. Yeah.
Yeah. So this dude, he interviewed me, what was it, 2 years ago? I think it was like 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
it was 2 years ago. I think so. Yeah. My whole reason why I say the Art Bell thing is because I'll entertain everything in the paranormal, esoteric, conspiracy world. Lately it's been heavily like geared towards conspiracies and like alien stuff and but I mean I'll entertain anything because that's kind of what Art Bell did, but I want to do it from a podcast perspective, whereas people were doing it, Art Bell was doing it from a radio perspective. And I feel like I'm gonna be like a young soul to leave this place. I don't think I'm gonna stay around forever, so I try to crank out as much content as possible. Like I'm always like I try to put out a video every day, an interview,
Smart
so
man. Yeah, if you got that kind of energy, brother, that's the way to do it. I burned out a little bit on doing like weekly videos, but I love doing weekly streams still. Part of it's because I've changed some of what I do and some of my perspective a little bit. But no, I think it's awesome. I think it's a popular thing, and I had a good time when you interviewed me. Like we had an interesting conversation. You know, like you were saying before we jumped on, you don't really practice anything, but you're into it. You like to hear about it and to know what it is, and so that's always a good thing. And I am a little bit of a skeptic, believe it or not. I am not a skeptic, but I'm not a pseudo skeptic. I am just a agnostic skeptic. Like when someone says I saw a UFO, I'm like, okay, send me all the video that you got if you got any, and I'm gonna look at it, and not from a position of, oh, I'm gonna make this not true. I'm gonna go at it like, okay, let's rule out anything that could be misidentified phenomenon that we know. So if I see a light in the sky, I want to make sure, okay, is that following a flight pattern? Is that a bug being illuminated by the infrared? Does it do weird movements? Does it flicker? So I want to see like as much as I can, because I want it to be true, but I also don't want to be fooled. And I think that's the right attitude. Like my favorite conspiracy theory channel ever right now, I guess I should say, is this channel called the Y-Files. Have you ever watched that channel?
no, I've never heard of it. I think what's so interesting. I think one of my subscribers told me about it recently, but I haven't checked it out yet. I got to check it out. But I heard they're gaining a lot of traction. Really,
Oh,
yeah.
this dude's huge. I mean, he's probably making millions of dollars now. I mean, his YouTube channel blew up. He's got, when he ends his video, he shows like all of the patrons and shit. And let's say they're all just putting $1 in. The dude's like a millionaire right now from just doing these podcasts, these videos.
Wow.
He does them once a week. He's got a great thing going. It's very entertaining. He's very, like I like to see. He's not a skeptic that just debunks everything, and he's not a believer that just believes everything. He really researches and does his due diligence, and half the time there's a grain of truth left over that makes you go, that's pretty interesting. And that's what I like about him. He doesn't have an agenda. He just the truth. That's all he wants. And it's a very entertaining show. He's got cute merchandise. It's fun, dude. He's one of the few people I would recommend.
I like that, and I think that's the way we should all be. I kind of entertain like a lot of things on my channel. Probably like I should be a little bit more skeptical with the name Typical Skeptic, but I'm a lot more skeptical in my personal life. Like I do have people that send me UFOs on a daily. I have a girl from Canada. She sees craft every night, and they
Mm.
look like real craft. It's amazing. Like I told her, I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm coming up there because I want to see them for myself, because where I'm at in Pittsburgh, I don't get anything. And then what's interesting is I had Dr. Courtney Brown on my show from the Farsight Institute, the remote viewing place,
Mm-hmm.
and what he told me was he said you need to get a Lumix GH6 camera, and you need to film in infrared, and then you need to slow down the shots. And I guess what that does, he said, basically it's like Star Wars up there, and we're not
Okay.
seeing it. And he has
Okay.
proof of it on his Instagram. He showed it on my show. Like So I mean, as far as like proof, that dude had the best, and then I would say the girl from Canada had the next best, like as far as like real evidence goes. But I will entertain the stories too of people who say they've been mylabbed or experimented on by aliens or the government, or because I find that so interesting. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I'm not myself, but I will entertain it.
I was actually very so my history's long and varied, dude. I've been dicking around with some of this stuff since I was 12 or 13 years old, and I was also a hard skeptic for about 15 years after being literally like psychically burned by some of this stuff. Like I think I was going nuts. So I walked
Yeah.
away from it, and I realized that it was what I needed to do because I needed to learn how to be more rational about it and not just be a believer about everything. And the way that ended up was a good thing because when I got back into it, I now know how to approach these things from a rational perspective. So I'm testing, as they say, like a Christian would say, testing the spirits. I don't just believe it, I make sure that what I'm dealing with is real, helpful, because there's a lot of things that are not helpful. Some things are very dangerous, believe it or not. There's entities and interests and things in this world, in this universe, in this consciousness that are not always friendly, we'll say. And so you have to know how to split the difference and get the good stuff without subjecting yourself to danger. And I guess what I'm saying is that it's a good thing to have a healthy dose of skepticism, and that's coming from a guy with pentagrams on his wall and talks to spirits and the whole nine yards. So
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, like, because like I don't understand it. Like from my perspective, like some of my fans might look at you and they'll say, "Oh, he's like satanic," but I know you're not really. I don't think I think you're more like Luciferian, but you have a good explanation behind it. But it's really interesting. Like you're very reasonable and like you're not like I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I need to learn more. Like
sure.
I
Well,
definitely need to learn more. Like you know.
my views changed a lot too. So how do I put this? So no, I'm not a Satanist. I've never been a Satanist at all. But there's Satanism, and then there's what you and I would probably recognize as the cabal. Okay. And those
Yeah.
guys, those guys and gals, those are closer to what people would call satanic. And when I say that, I don't mean Anton LaVey Satanism, which is atheistic. I don't mean people like me who practice left-hand non-dual spirituality. We're talking about people that legitimately are worse than misanthropic. They're worse than anti-cosmic. These people are involved in things which I can only dip the tip of my pinky into and understand. It's if my intuition and research and spirit guides and everything else are correct, the things that I didn't believe a year ago, that I was very, very, very skeptical about, I'm now more or less on board with. And we're talking about what colloquially gets called ancient aliens and disclosure. And I absolutely do believe that I don't even want to say good guys and bad guys because that's too binary, but the people that we recognize as the cabal, they absolutely, at the top levels, they are connected with entities that are not human. They are nefarious as shit. I mean, they are, they feed off of anger, pain, misery, amongst
Loosh,
other things.
loosh, right?
What's that?
Loosh. They feed off our loosh. That's what they call it. It's like our energy. Like
That's what some people would say. Yeah. I don't love that because there's a whole mythology that goes with it that I think is bogus. Like you're supposed to remove your chakras and all that. I personally think that's bogus, but chakras don't. So some of the issue is that humanity has been indoctrinated into a materialistic and physical delusion. If you go back a couple of hundred years, even 400 years, this idea that reality is a material object starts to break down. People were idealists. You know, the philosophy was idealism. And physicalism and materialism only came into vogue really about 200 years ago. It was always there, but it was always kind of, you know, the real intellectuals were the mystics. Those were the ones, the mystical philosophers were always like at the forefront. And Aristotle shows up, and he didn't deny the ideal. You know, he was, but he believed that in a more reductionist view, comparatively. So me, I was born and raised in that same paradigm of materiality and physicality. And then over many years, I've wrestled with it. I got into non-dual spirituality. I had what you might think of as like breakthroughs there. You know, I had meditative breakthroughs. I achieved different levels of trance states until eventually, with some assistance with, you know, certain substances, I was able to reach Turiya and some other very deep meditative states. And I realized fully, without any doubt, that consciousness is the fundamental fabric of reality, not matter, not, you know, space-time is an illusion. It's a holographic mental space that we use to relate. But ultimately everything is consciousness and mind. That's ultimately what everything is. It looks physical. The things that science have discovered, there's nothing wrong with it. They're self-evident. If I drop this cup, it's going to fall. Juice is going to go everywhere. But it's not really a cup. It's not really juice. It is my own mental hologram of cup and juice. And there is no cup of juice here. This is a holistic image in the mind.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have like, there's something in our eyes that tell us what's real and what's not real, supposedly, right? There's,
well,
it's like, it's weird. It's weird. Like,
you know, think of it this way. Have you ever seen your eyes? Do you know you have eyes? Really think about it.
I mean, from what I can see, I see a projection of what I think I am.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
But that's all subjective.
Right. So each of us live. So you've probably heard of like the brain in the jar thought experiment, where, you know, for all you know, there is no world outside, and you're just a brain in a jar that's being fed this experience as a delusion, because the world that we know, all of us, is a mental hologram. That is understood in science 100%. They know exactly. If I go to a neuroscientist and say, we all live in a mental hologram, none of them would dispute what I just said. They would just argue that there is an objective physical reality outside of that you're bumping into. But the problem here, the scientific establishment, and I like to use the word establishment because there are many scientists that are not part of that establishment, that have alternate theories. But the scientific establishment is a culture. It's a cult. It is become almost religious. They have dogma. They always have had dogma. Einstein was rejected by mainstream science. He was called a pseudoscientist until one of his theories was proven, and then suddenly everything changed. So what had to happen, unfortunately, was a lot of the old guard from the 1800s had to die off so that new blood was willing to entertain those questions. And we have nothing. It's exactly the same today. There's no difference today, except with the exception that the really cutting edge physicists are also no longer strictly physicalists anymore. They are starting to accept, many of them are even proposing, that either consciousness is an important fundamental quality of reality or it is the most fundamental. Now, I belong to the camp that says everything is consciousness manifesting as all of these phenomenon, which is very difficult for the average person to wrap their head around because it's opposite what you've been taught your whole life. Your whole life you've been taught that if you hold up an object, that's really the object. You've been taught that what you see is representative of reality, but it's not. It's never been. And the elites of this world know this. They know that consciousness is fundamental. And one of the ways that you can, as in your line of inquiry, that you can kind of I don't want to say prove it, but the evidence, one piece of evidence for it is the way remote viewing works, or telepathic communication. It does not follow the typical rules of latency. So if you have a remote viewer, they can view the past, they can view the present, and they can view the future. And it's instantaneous. There's no delay. So if you give them, depending upon the method they use, because there's different methods, if they use the more military method, as it might be called, the like CIA method, they're not like out of bodying. They're not doing that kind of stuff. They hand a sensitive person, and anybody can do it. They hand them, you know, they give them the instructions so they know how to do this. There's like a method to it. They hand them a thing that has a number on it, right? It's got 2 sets of numbers. They don't know anything else. And they just say, remote view this target, please. And
that's controlled remote viewing, I believe.
Yeah, I think
that's like the kind that Lynn Buchanan used and the people from the Stargate Project. You know, I think that's what you mean, right?
I think so. I have to look it up. I do occasionally watch New Thinking Aloud, and that's where I first heard about this method. I've had my
Jeffrey
own methods.
Mitchell, he's awesome. Yeah,
he's a good guy. I'd love to be on his show or interview him. He's an interesting character. And he's been doing this forever, dude. I didn't know he's been doing this for like the 80s even. Like I saw a video going back.
I got to interview him when I first started, and then I tried to get him on for a second interview, and I haven't been able to because I'd love to talk to him about remote viewing. I got to have Lynn Buchanan on, who was like one of the original remote viewers for the guy. I've interviewed a lot of remote viewers, so you would think that I would know more about it, but I know a little bit. I know what you're talking about, how there's differences in like the physical kind that they, you know, like, yeah. And then there's other people who can just kind of project out of body and kind of bilocate and do remote viewing that way. You know, that's more like the more esoteric way.
Yep. And they both do work to different degrees of effectiveness and accuracy, but they're generally in a lot of ways the same. I would argue that the out of body version is the same as the other version. It's just more vivid, and it doesn't make it more accurate because your mind is still filling in blanks, unfortunately. So, but for those who don't know, that controlled method, I guess is what you're calling it. You get a set of numbers. You have no idea what you're supposed to even be looking at. You don't get any hints. You're not supposed to get any hints. You're supposed to meditate on those numbers for a moment. And then the first things that come to your mind, you just start writing down, drawing pictures, whatever you got to do. The first things, and you don't think about it. You don't try to figure out what it is. It's like, you know, lemon, teacup, air freshener, stinky ass, you know, like just different words. You just wrote them down. And then... and then you give it to the people who ask the question, and then they go over those answers and they use them to figure, because they already know the target area. Like they have an idea of what the target is. You know, maybe they're trying to get you to find a missing person, and they know that they're probably somewhere in this region. You know, like maybe they know they're somewhere in the state or something. And so they'll ask you to find them, and then they'll use your answers to try to narrow down a search location. And it does work. I've done it. There's a video that like teaches you how, and I'm like, fuck it. I've done it my own way. Let's try this controlled method. I pretty much got a really good, strong hit. Like I got, like 10 different things came to mind, and only one of them didn't fit. Everything else fit perfectly, to the point where I was like, why would I have this? Why did I forget what it was? The reason why I said smelly butt when I was saying that before is because I got like smelly ass. And then I was like, oh my God, there's like a picture of a llama in the picture. I was like, that's why. So, you know, that's the thing.
What were you viewing at the time? Do you remember? Like, do you remember what you were trying to...
It was like a picture of Machu Picchu or something. It was just a photograph that they wanted us to predict, basically. And, you know, the thing is that it's, you can develop the same ability just by being mindful of what you're doing, and just allowing your intuition to be heard. And don't overthink it. Don't try to reason through it. Don't try to ask a fuck ton of questions. Don't try to calculate it. Don't try to fill in the blanks. Just go with the thing is, the brain, it's not even your brain, the mind likes to take over, because your conscious mind is very neurotic, and it's very anxious. Even if you're like me and you can go into meditative states where there's no overt thinking, there's still a tendency to cloud your experience with impressions, even if they're not like thoughts or pictures, especially when you're trying to reason something out, right? So if you're just going, it's almost like being totally reactionary. It's like it's almost like you're a vegetable, you know, like you're trying not to put anything into it. You're trying to just be purely feminine receptive, just first thing that comes to mind. And that works. It works like a charm. And as you develop this, you start to become more and more prescient, and more things are synchronistic. And as that develops, you start to get an uncanny awareness, and people start to listen to you when you say, you know, I got a bad feeling about this. People go, oh, let's listen to him, because when he gets a bad feeling, we know it's going to be a real thing. So there's a lot that there is out there. The one of the problems, though, is that a lot of people that get into this, number one, we have lost connection with the traditional cultures where these things were actually developed to a rather high degree. And I don't just mean like ancient aliens. I mean, even just Aboriginal, you know, indigenous people that, you know, they have a wise man, a shaman, a medicine man, whatever that is. You know, they've got like their tribal spiritual guy or gal, you know. Those people, they're not just quacks that said they saw a ghost in their house and now they're psychic. These are people that, you know, they are, they're identified. The shaman of the tribe will, you know, find them, train them, develop them. And a lot of the times they are what we would call schizophrenic. In a lot of cases, the people that we call schizo, who see weird things without any chemicals or anything, in ancient cultures, they realize that those people, yeah, they can go crazy, but they realize that those people, if they are properly, shall we say, groomed, or in a positive sense, not the negative grooming, in a positive sense, if they're properly trained, groomed, and helped, that thing which seems like insanity to us becomes a useful talent to them, because their visions have value, whether it's because they're predictive or simply because they can bring wisdom, you know, and spiritual insight. So those people, they're not outcasts, they're actually elevated in society. And in a lot of cases, the incidence of that being a mental health problem is averted, because instead of treating them like they're sick, they treat them as if they have value, and that helps them to integrate into their culture, and that reduces the damage or danger, whatever that condition brings. In other words, in our society, if someone has schizophrenia, if it's mild, most people just kind of ignore it. If it's moderate, they take medication. And if it's really bad, they tend to go to the loony bin or something, like they get outcast from society. But if you go to, say, Africa or the Amazon or something like that, someone with that very same condition will be treated as if they are gifted. And if possible, they are integrated that way. And it's a valuable thing to them. So what I would say is we got it ass backwards. I think that in our case, a lot of people, we don't have that connection to that spiritual center. You know, our religions are so Western, materialistic, empty, soulless things. They're just ways of making the churches rich and the synagogues rich, and they're not really about developing the individual. If you've ever really looked, it doesn't really work that way. It just makes them, it's like an opiate that makes them feel better about being raped by the state, you know. Oh, well, God loves me and I'm going to heaven when this is over, so I guess I'll just deal with what they're doing to me.
I was going to say, like, do you think a lot of times, like, these, like, mental, like, problems that people have, like a schizophrenic, is actually entities? I've thought of that a lot. That maybe that's entities, like, talking to someone and, like, projecting their thoughts into someone's consciousness.
Yeah, I don't want to say, I don't want to say assertively yes or no. I'm going to say sometimes I'm pretty sure it is, and I think sometimes it's not. But here's the thing. I'm also speaking in a frame of language that is going to be understood by the average person, not just you, but the average listener. There are higher platitudes of understanding whereby you realize that you don't really make stuff up. Like, you don't imagine things. You find it in the multiverse and witness it like a bilocation almost, right? But you're still rooted here. So if I tell you to close your eyes, and you close your eyes and I say, imagine a universe where every planet is a giant bouncy ball, and when you're standing on it, you can jump like 100 miles in the air. So if everybody closed their eyes and did that, okay, that's really weird, Thorne. What's the point? Somewhere in the multiverse that exists. You're not making it up. You're tuning into it, manifesting it as an imaginary thought, but you're not going there. Like, you're still centered in this incarnation. It's like you're dipping your baby toe into that other reality and giving it a sample and coming back. This is also, this is a higher, more ancient understanding. The ancients recognize this more, and they realize that this is why you can, if you center yourself in an idea strongly enough, you will gradually shift into that idea if you really, really will it to be that way. So for example, and this is like, if you listen to Manly P. Hall, you listen to Hermeticists, you listen to all these people going back, it's not about the ritual. That's a tool. That's not what does it. It's sort of like, you know, when you sing your ABCs, it helps you remember the ABCs. By doing a candle spell, it's like helping you remember and connect to that reality. So what you're doing is you're remote viewing another reality. And if it is accessible to you through some shifting of consciousness through multiversal timelines to reach it, you can make it your personal reality. But it's not something that changes the world objectively around you. So let's say I visualize in my own way that, I don't know, something minor, but something that would be objective. So I imagine, okay, I won a lotto ticket for $100, right? And so I visualize, I put myself in that position, and I leave room for it to manifest. So I don't get too specific. I go, I'm going to win a lotto scratch off sometime in the next month, you know? And I center myself in that intention. I visualize it, I feel it, and I feel myself in that reality as best I can. I make it as vivid a belief as I can. Then I bring myself back to now, and I maintain connection to that, but I don't fixate on it like a lustful, oh, I can't wait, or oh, I wish I had money. Just remember that it was done. Remember that feeling, and start taking actions of some kind that would facilitate that to happen. And by golly, more often than you would think possible, it happens. But let's say you wanted to jump off the roof and fly. Well, that's a harder thing to make happen, because you're not just simply changing a timeline. You're not just, you know, making a left in the fork, you know, of temporal reality. You know, should I take the left-hand road or the right-hand road? You're not doing that. You're literally changing the fundamental paradigm of reality where the natural laws are now different. That's a much bigger jump if you think about it. It is also very difficult.
You're changing the molecules of everything you're changing the physical structure of this reality, which is very hard, right? Like it's
but that's just it. You're not. But that's just it. You're not. You're changing the channel. It's like you're changing the dial on a radio, and you're making that your new reality. Because you have to realize that in the multiverse, everything exists already, from start to finish. There is no now moment that's moving through time. That's not what happens. It's always now. Now is eternal. In other words, 10 billion years ago was also now. And every point in the multiverse is connected in consciousness. There is no separation. So as consciousness, you can shift to any point in the multiverse, but there are limitations, and those limitations are psychic. They're psychological limitations. They're not physical. It's not because it's too far away physically. It's because your psychic attachment is to this person and its paradigm of reality. You're attached to like this story. You don't want to change that too much, because then you'll feel like you died, or you'll feel like it's too weird. Like, what if I told you that, like, what if you went to sleep tonight and woke up tomorrow and you were 12 years old again? Wouldn't you probably go partially crazy, like instantaneously? Wouldn't you just be like, what the fuck? It would blow your mind. You wouldn't be able to handle it. You would be traumatized. Insane. It would be insane.
Yeah.
But if I said, okay, here is a time machine and you will gradually regress somehow, there'll be like a way that it happens. The more gradual and rational it is, the more likely you are to ease into it and accept it. So this is why my limitation as a magician, as a sorcerer, as a mystic, I can't just teleport to your house and be like, what's up, bro? Because first of all, I wouldn't move. What I would be doing is I would be shifting into a timeline where I'm already there. Or I'd be shifting into a paradigm of reality where making a physical leap like that is possible. But that would require accepting that new paradigm. And everybody would say, oh, I would accept it. I don't think you realize how, and when I say that, I mean to this person, this hypothetical person, I don't think you realize how traumatizing it would actually be to have your understanding of reality that traumatically and dramatically changed.
It's like you're shattering your old reality and accepting a new reality.
Correct. And that's not easy to do. Look at how people react to, for example, learning that the New World Order is real. They reject it because all their lives the media has told them that that's conspiracy theory, and they don't even want to, think of it as real. And as this everything begins to unfold, you can see it. You can see people going through a dark night of the soul. You can see people in shock. And there are some people that resist it so hard, they're becoming more and more toxic. They're becoming more and more aggressive and nasty to people who know, because they are experiencing cognitive dissonance. Well, you can have cognitive dissonance not just in your normal mundane psyche, but in your spiritual psyche on a level that you go spiritually and psychically insane, not just a little momentarily like, ooh, cuckoo. I mean, you can become broken. And I believe that this does happen to people. I think that there are people that they shift their reality so much that they are 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in another, and they don't know which one that they're really in at any given time. And so you'll see them walking down the road, walking an invisible dog, but to them, there's a dog there. Who is right? Yeah. Is it me or that person? I think that both of us are right. I think in this frequency of consciousness, it's not right, but in theirs, it is. And they can't prove it to me objectively, but guess what? I can't prove it to them either. I can't prove to them there's no dog there. Because if I walk over and kick the space where the dog is, they're going to see the dog go flying. And they're going to be like, what the fuck did you do? So who's exactly. Right?
Yeah, it's all in a matter of perspective, right? It's like, exactly. So like what you choose to, it's what you choose to accept into your reality.
Something like that.
I just want to say that's what I guess where I'm having the hardest time, like as far as like manifesting. Like I think I've tried manifesting lately, and I'm able to manifest like certain amounts, and I get the limits, and like when I get to limits, like I can't like overcome them. Like it's like I'm set to a certain amount of like, I don't know how to say that. Like say I'm trying to manifest money. Sorry, I'm filling up my vape. Like when I'm trying to manifest money, like I'll only be able to manifest like say like close to $1,000, but I can't get past that. It's like I can pay, like or say more than that, I'll be able to pay my bills and stuff. But then that's it. It's not like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like I can't manifest a millionaire's lifestyle.
No, I completely understand, because That's exactly what I mean. And this is why a lot of people treat it like you're building muscles, because you've got to gradually build up to bigger changes. Little changes everyone can do right now. Every single person in this room, if I said, imagine yourself picking up an object and putting it down and then go do it, you just completed a minor shift of timeline. That's so minor, you don't even think of it as a shift of timeline. You think you just did an action. What you don't realize is you didn't do an action, you followed, you witnessed that. Sort of like you're watching a movie or reading a book. You're not doing it, you're witnessing the doing of it. And you as consciousness can go anywhere in the multiverse at any time. But psychically, you're limited to what's rational, or not just rational, but what you subconsciously accept. So it's easy to do a minor little shift of timeline. You know, I'm going to take the left on that road and the right on that road. You know, like you come into a fork in the road, that's a minor shift. We can all do that instantly, effortlessly. But when it comes to something that's indirect or further out, it's a lot harder to do. And when you start getting into things that break what you think of as the laws of reality, there is even more restriction. So the more deeply, and it's not about belief, because, you know, if someone believes that they can fly, I challenge them to prove it. You know what I mean? So this is what I was getting at before, is that when you make a conscious shift in reality, there's a very good chance that you are the only one that's going to realize you did it, because everybody else is going to be like, I don't notice any difference. This is exactly the way it was before, you know, or they're going to see it as rational. So like I completed a massive timeline shift about 3 to 6 months ago, depending upon how you look at things. And the timeline shift that I made was from a timeline where the New World Order is winning, humanity is going to go into like some kind of dystopia, to one where, oh my goodness, all of this Q stuff is real. There's going to be D-class disclosure. It's just a matter of time. We're watching devolution. We're watching the New World Order collapse right now. That's why it looks so crazy. And it's like, I see it clear as day now. And I will be shocked if I'm wrong, because that means I bounce back into the wrong one again. Something I must have done something or forgot something or whatever.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I have people that come on my show that say that like there's going to be people, and these aren't even not necessarily New Agers. So like
Right.
They're not New Agers, but they're people who still say that they believe that there's going to be a split between the people who believe that we're entering like more of a fifth dimensional reality, or people
Correct.
that are the higher consciousness, and people who are still stuck in like the 3D world.
I don't necessarily agree with their I don't necessarily agree with their terminology, but I absolutely agree with the sentiment. I think they're completely right. This has been in the Hopi prophecy. There was always that humanity has two ways of going. We either go into a path of destruction or the golden path. This is also in the book of Dune. If you read or watch the movies of Dune, that's the whole point of the whole series, is Paul Muad'Dib puts humanity on the golden path. And if you look at Dune, there's so many corollaries to our world, from the psychedelic spice melange to the even more psychedelic water of life, to the powers, the prescience, to timelines, to all of that. That's all real. And the ancients know this, and aliens know it, and advanced people in government know it. They understand, but they also understand that you can shift your own reality by also changing the paradigm that everybody else around you believe in. It's another technique. So this is why it's so important for them to convince you of things, to make you believe what they want and all of this, because they kind of drag you along into the reality that they want. Now, you're not moving physically. There's no physical changing. There's nothing physical changing at all. Your body's not going into another reality. When I say personal consciousness, I don't mean it as if you're separate from universal, non-dual consciousness. I mean your personal experience of consciousness, shall we say, your personal individuated consciousness can be drawn along into any timeline that they want. So as you liberate yourself by learning and realizing and coming to understand what you are, who you are really, and you open your mind to bigger possibilities than what they tell you is true, then your little tiny deterministic physical reality starts to open up and become a little bit more mysterious and more mysterious. And then next thing you know, aliens are real and spirits are real. And then next thing you know, magic is real. And as you keep going, next thing you know, there's a multiverse, and there is nothing except your own psyche that holds you back. At that point, you're a fully realized being. You're like the more advanced alien species that they talk about, the ones that are virtually godlike, because they can manifest any reality that they will like that. They can appear and disappear, and literally they might even be able to change the fabric. I'm not sure about that. I don't think so, but they might even be able to change the fabric itself. Now, me personally, I don't think that's the case, but maybe that's my limitation. Maybe I don't realize that it's possible, and so I can't do that. Maybe if I realized it fully, and I don't mean just think it, what is a belief, Rob? If I were to ask you, what do you believe, and can you change your belief? Only a fool would say yes. How do you intentionally change what you believe except by believing it? I can't tell you to believe that water is fire. Like, that won't work, will it? No, of course not. So when people say,
it's all again in your perception, right? It's like what you perceive.
Yeah. And it's a matter of perspective and perception. This is why when you're a beginner in mysticism and magic, you have to maintain a very open mind that is guarded with like a Cerberus style skeptical mindset. So you have to have both, like, fully all the time. You have to be willing to ask questions. Like, you have to be willing to accept strange shit, but at the same time, you've got to have a shield up that won't let you fall for everything. And that's what I was getting at before when I was talking about the other cultures and societies. Our modern world, we're so disconnected from the truth, because if you look at the tribal people in this world, and you go to them and you say, what is your spiritual beliefs? Like, if I were to go I would know how to ask them the question, I think, if I could speak their language. What do you believe the fundamental nature of reality is? What do you think all of this is? Where does it come from? In almost every single case, if you go to an Aboriginal or indigenous group of quote unquote primitive people, they're only primitive technologically. Spiritually, they're usually way more advanced. They're almost space age by comparison, a lot of them. If you ask them, they all will tell you something that is in alignment with what modern people would recognize as non-duality or universal consciousness or all connectedness. Like, they all have a very, all is one kind of feeling. They know that they are not just in nature, they are part of nature, and nature's part of them. They see it as an interconnected whole. They don't see it as a bunch of separate things. They don't see themselves as separate from the jungle. They see themselves as children of the jungle, children of the gods. They're all one thing. So that's a very basic non-dual understanding. And you can develop a more and more sophisticated non-dual understanding. But the irony is, you have to be indoctrinated into the materialistic, physicalistic, dualistic perspective that most people today have. If you go walk down the street in any given city and you ask them what the nature of reality is, every single one of them is going to reply with the utterly ridiculous statement that we live in a physical space-time reality with bumping particles, and that consciousness is not, you don't have a soul. And even Christians, even spiritual people, will have a materialistic and dualistic understanding of their own spirituality, whereas their soul is separate from their body, whereas the body is just a filthy, dirty thing that they've just been pushed into, and that you have to do this and that like it's a machine to go to heaven. These people have been infected with a mind virus that nothing else, no, I shouldn't say nothing else, but that no other higher beings think. Like I said, you go to the Amazon rainforest and ask that shaman what reality is, and they're going to tell you it's a dream. Go to the Aboriginal people of Australia. They call it a dream. They don't tell you that reality is this physical shit. They tell you this physical shit is part of a dream. And there's different layers of the dream. There's the dream time on the one side, and then there's the waking time, but they're both a dream. They understand intuitively that it's a dream.
Yeah, some people say that like they've had like psychedelic experiences that are more real than this reality, you know? I mean,
And
me personally, I've never broke through. I've done DMT, I've done shrooms, like, and I don't know, man. Like, I mean, like, I've saw geometric patterns. Yeah, that's the best way I can explain it. Like, I've never like went to another dimension, saw aliens or anything like that. Like, that's the most I ever got was on DMT, and I saw patterns. Like, were you the same, or what? Were you?
Well, you don't need those things to do that. It's just really hard without it. There are ways to have very similar experiences through meditation, through breathing, through pranayama, different kinds of techniques. You can absolutely enter altered states of consciousness through transcendental work. You don't have to use chemicals.
Yeah.
You know, I have used certain things to help me get deeper into meditative states, but I've never tripped balls or anything like that. It doesn't mean I won't, you know, but I just want to do it in a safe and controlled way. It's not, I don't want to do it, you know, I don't want to do it for recreational purposes. I want to do it for spiritual purposes if I do. So I'd like to go to an ayahuasca ceremony, or I'd like to get the right stuff, set up a proper meditation situation, or, you know, go lay in a field or something. You know, I don't want to just be like, woohoo, let's party. You know, no, that's not my.
No, that's what I'm the same way. I'm the same way, because I was like that when I was a kid. You know, I did shrooms for fun and stuff, but now every time I do it, it's more for spiritual. But still, like, I wanted to break through. You know what I mean? And I couldn't. I don't know what I mean, because I've heard like people like Cliff High. If you ever heard him talk, he talks about where he's done these journeys where he's had interactions with beings like that were like humanoid but alien, and that makes me think, well, are they like is that his mind creating that, or these actual beings that he's interacting with that are existing outside of this construct or whatever this reality is?
Well, that's what I'm saying to you is that you're not, there is no, obviously you haven't realized this. Yes. So you've got to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Okay. But I'm telling you that I have validated for myself, and I'm not the first and I'm not the last. This is the fundamental realization of all mystical people, is that physical reality is an illusion. It doesn't mean that it doesn't behave like physical reality. It does. But this is, the whole simulation theory. Simulation theory is just an updated version of things like non-duality and idealism. What they've done is taken the fundamental understanding of idealism and put it in a computer, which is ridiculous. That's simulation theory is, put that in a toilet and flush it several times. It's a garbage idea, because all those people have done is they've projected what they know into a higher dimension and decided that this reality is this computer simulation in a higher dimension. What kind of computer, dude? No. Get that out of your mind. Understand.
Well, I know this. I know the Gnostics were like the first to start thinking that we were in some kind of like artificial reality, right?
Not the first, no. Hermeticism, at least according to what we have on record, is the most obvious version of that. And Gnosticism is another version. Gnosticism did something similar. They've got a way more... Gnosticism's a complicated animal because there is no one Gnosticism. There is a halo of different beliefs and traditions, and they're not all Christian. So you have Christian Gnostics, you have pre-Christian Gnostics. The pre-Christian Gnostics don't really get called that very often. They're kind of fringy, like as modern people talk about this. When you say Gnostics, usually you're talking about a Christian. And you're talking about a Christian before Orthodox Christianity. And you're actually talking about what used to be mainstream Christianity was Gnostic Christianity. And Gnostic Christians outnumbered what we think of today as like Protestants, Catholics, all that kind of stuff. They came 300 or 400 years later. So the original Christians were predominantly Gnostic or mystical or something like that. And they believed by and large, that many of them anyway, many of the different Gnostic cults believed that Yahweh was a bad guy and that Jesus was the good guy, right? So you're familiar with all that. That's
Yeah.
a very interesting take, because that's actually closer to what's, if you go back to Sumeria, that's closer to the truth, because in Sumeria you had Enlil and An or Anu, and you had Enki, the big three. And there's always three. I don't know if you ever noticed, there's always a Father, a Son, and a Holy Ghost, a Father, a Son, and a brother. There's always a
Even
big
going
three.
back to Babylon, there's always three.
Further,
I think it was Babylon.
Sumeria.
It was like Skiramis. I can't remember. But it's interesting. Like, that's very interesting. Even
So-
in Greek, you have like Zeus, Poseidon, and Kronos.
Hades. Hades, actually. Yeah. Kronos was before them.
Hey,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Well, that's because it's all from Proto-Indo-European legend, which actually traces back to Atlantis, Lemuria, and all of that. So you're talking about stuff that goes back to pre-flood, to pre-1200, 10,000, 12,000 BC.
Antediluvian civilizations.
Correct. Which I am completely on board with now. I used to be like, I don't know. Now I'm like, if it isn't that, then I don't want it. Like, I don't think it could be anything else now. There's too much evidence, in my opinion, to just rule it out. It's definitely, it has to be part of the story of humanity. We just haven't gotten the proof that we need to get the skeptics out of the way, because they're gatekeeping it. I think the proof is right there. I think the world powers know it. I think they've been hiding it from us because they know the chaos that it would ensue, and they want to control that collapse. They don't want to get consumed by it, because they know the truth. They are the bloodlines that go back to that.
Their whole reality is based on a 6,000 year reality that they control with religion.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so they want to compact everybody into that reality, and they want that to be your base reality. If you're not a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim, then you're not a part of the part of the party. It's
and if you look, like the Nurture's talking about, you have Apsu and Tiamat, and so every tradition has its primordial void, its chaos, its oblivion that it starts from. But the understanding, if you're really clever and if you're reading between the lines, that primordial chaos that you see in Greek, or the void, or whatever, the darkness before time, that's consciousness. That's what they're talking about. They're not talking about literal empty space. They're talking about consciousness, pure consciousness, without anything being witnessed in it. So pure consciousness then begins to have reality appear the way we understand it. And that begins with duality. So you have Apsu and Tiamat, or you have, what was it in the Greek after primordial chaos? I forget who came first and next, but you had usually a couple come out, like, that are born first, and then they give birth to this, and they blah, blah, blah. And every tradition has a very similar thing. Well, if you look at that, and you look at alchemy, and you look at these things, you have, and sacred geometry, you have the same pattern: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on, and it's always the same. So you have the original, which is that first one, that's chaos. Then you have one's image of itself, that's mind, the first mind. That's Neoplatonism and Hermeticism. So you have the one, the good, the God, whatever. Then you have that being's idea of itself. That's the multiverse. Then you have, within that, multiple beings begin appearing with sentient awareness. Those are the high gods. Those are the Anu and the Enlil, but they're children. They're several layers down. And then you have, it just keeps shrinking. So there is a great model that this one guy, Bernardo Kastrup, uses. I love his work, although I don't always agree with his politics. I love his work. And he says, and I agree with this, that think of it like this: each one of us are alters, as in alternate personalities, for cosmic consciousness. And there can be a hierarchical nature to that. He's one of those people who looks at the structure of the universe and says, that looks like a brain. And I would agree, that looks like a brain, which means we might be living in a mind, and that's what the mind looks like to us. That doesn't mean it is a brain, because we have the cart before the horse. We've been trained that physicality comes first and consciousness second. It's the other way around completely. Consciousness first, and then everything that is witnessed in it is an emergent appearance. Like consciousness is like clay, and your brain is like something you mold out of that clay.
Yeah.
You don't
That's
need
kind
a
of like
brain.
what they say, like when Enki made humans, he used clay. He used the clay of the earth to make humans, which is like maybe metaphorical or something, or maybe he really did use something out of the earth. Like,
Well,
hold on, I
it
got to
could
turn
be
this
all
space
three.
heater off.
It could be a combination, because you have to understand the way that we believe. If you do the research, the way that the people who are considered experts on this topic, you have people, I mean, I don't trust all of them. I got to be clear with you. Some of them are flaky. Some of them are nuts. Some of them are evil. Some of them have agendas that I don't trust. But they would argue, and I think that they're correct, that there are realities in the multiverse. And I believe that right now I'm in that reality where by manipulating, manipulating is the wrong word. We would think of it like manipulating. To our frame of mind, it's manipulating. By manipulating the fundamental fabric, you can manifest anything. So it's all by vibration and energy levels and all of that kind of stuff. So you can, the idea is, and I attack this on my channel a lot, because I want people to detach from the materialistic frame of mind. Like, think of it like this: we're all addicted to a materialistic lie, and that doesn't mean that you can't use the good things that materialism has discovered. It means it's like when you have an addict, you got to get them away from that addictive activity, and then they can potentially reintegrate that activity in a healthy way again. So I discourage people from doing this whole everything is frequency and vibration stuff, because they're still thinking materialistically. You've got to eject from that physical materialistic mentality, recognize that the thing that is happening is it looks like vibration, but it's really consciousness. You're really shifting the reality that you're seeing. You're not changing that reality, you're changing the channel. But the stepping stone to that is like Tesla doing things with frequency of the ether. You're changing the ether, the aether, the fundamental substrate of physical reality. You're vibrating it, and you're making things emerge, like, because there's really no limit to energy. That's one of the big lies of materialistic science, is that there is a limit to energy. They say that, oh, it's entropic. You can't go against entropy. You can't break the laws of thermodynamics. What do you think dark energy does? What do you like? The same people who are telling you that you can't break the laws of thermodynamics are sitting here telling you that space is expanding faster and faster and faster because of dark energy? Where is that coming from? There is an infinite field of energy available to us. We just don't know how to tap into it, or should I say we're not allowed to know, because I think it's actually easy. I think it's something that you can figure out in the Victorian era with the tools that they had, because Tesla did. Tesla did figure it out. I think he did, or he got very close to. I think that it's something that we should have had for 100 years, and they've kept for themselves, and they know how to do it. And it's probably easy as can be. And everybody who starts doing it, they suppress it, destroy it, take it away. That's going to end soon. That's going to end soon. In our lifetime, that's going to end. And if it doesn't, then I jumped the wrong timeline. But I'm convinced it's going to happen maybe 10 years, maybe 30 years, maybe 4 years. I don't know. I know it won't happen next year, because we still have a lot more to go through. Humanity has to be awakened. This is the age of Aquarius. The Great Awakening is real. There's a reason why the Q people, why Q coined the phrase Great Awakening, because that's literally what the age of Aquarius is supposed to be.
Wait, I got something real interesting for you then, and I'd love to get you might have to go back to the interview I did. I had a Freemason on my show the other day. His name's Robert W. Sullivan IV. Okay, and he thinks that this age of Aquarius is actually going to be an age of destruction, and he's basing it on some curse that goes back to Aleister Crowley, And it has something to do with the Gota Mendez. I have to look into it more. I have to go back to the show I did with him, but like basically, he thinks that like because he looks at like signs that have pointed to this, and I don't know. It's so interesting. Like the way he said it was very interesting, but it's so hard for me to phrase like what exactly he said, you know. But
I'm very vaguely familiar with it, not enough to argue for or against his points, but I would argue that no matter how you look at it, the Age of Aquarius does mean destruction. The question is, what's it destruction of? Remember, we have a timeline split. That is real and it's ongoing. Some people off ramp in different places, right? Some people make the shift now and some people made it 5 years ago. But the shift is ongoing. Now, in that mentality, what gets destroyed? Because every time you have a change of the age, the old age has to die and the new age has to begin. So in this context, you have the destruction of the New World Order, Old Guard. They're getting destroyed. They're getting, if my gnosis is correct, and most people who know me, if I start talking this way, I'm almost never wrong. I'm not saying bank on it. I'm saying hedge your bets, put 80% of your assets into what I'm saying. Leave a little bit just in case I'm wrong. But they're getting BTFO'd right now. I can feel it. I felt it a while ago. I felt the shift and I was like, wait a minute. I don't feel them anymore. Some of them are dead now. I can tell. And lo and behold, if you look, Joe Biden's some dude in a mask. It's not even him. Hillary Clinton was probably arrested in Git mode back in 2015, 2016. It's some of this stuff is so off the wall zany. I don't think anyone's going to believe it. And maybe they'll never admit it. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that that's one destruction. The other destruction is the destruction of the other side. But here's the thing. I think they're right, just maybe not in a dark sense. I think they're right in the sense that when this is all over, Rob, I'm telling you, if I'm right, none of us are going to recognize this world much longer. Now,
I hope so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel like we're up against it, you know, I really do. I mean, it's hard not to in this world, you know?
Yeah. I mean, but that's how they're doing it is the white hats are using the same psychological technique that the black hats have been using. They're using the Hegelian dialectic, the problem reaction solution system, where they create a crisis that they already have a solution that they're going to do, but they want to bring everybody to a point of crisis so that they demand a solution and are willing to accept something that they wouldn't have accepted before. So if you go back to 2020, yeah, people like me would have been cheering if Donald Trump used the military to clean house and got rid of all the corruption on both sides of the aisle. But if he did that, every, green-haired, woke Nazi would turn to us and scream, oh my God, see, we were right. Trump is literally Hitler. He's pulling a coup. And then we had civil war. And the other side would have capitalized on that. America would have gone down in flames. That would have been that. They would have got their New World Order plan. It just would have been a sloppy injection instead of the way they wanted to do it. Instead, they're using a way more. They might have used AI to come up with this plan, dude. I don't know where they got this because this is wild. Like the stuff I'm seeing behind, like the chatter I'm seeing, the stuff I'm seeing, the people that I follow, it's wild because there's comms almost every day from Trump and other people that are proving stuff. So we're watching, when I say we're watching a show, I don't mean it's perfectly in hand, but it is like a controlled demolition show. And we're watching this show. We think this is all real. All of this has been gamed out 50, 60 years ago, probably in some cases, some parts of it. And we're watching this play out and we think it's happening in real time, but half the stuff that's happening was known to happen 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. And the question is this because they're time travelers or they just have gotten so good at AI algorithmic manipulation that they can predict things that well? And then what's the difference, to be honest? You also have Ingersoll Lockwood. If you've never heard of him, look that motherfucker up. This is a guy, if you go like right now, if you Google Ingersoll Lockwood, you're going to find a website that is filled with DOD shit. And every link is to some wacky fucking stuff, or every other link. Like there's like it. So if you go to the website, it's just a whole page of, you know, patriotic defense contract type of stuff. And then scattered around the page, there's little links. And some of them say like NSA, but then every once in a while, like one of the letters is highlighted, just the letter. And if you click on that letter, it'll go to like Google Earth, and it'll take you to a spot in Antarctica that is what looks like a cave that's the size of like, you know, like New York, the state. There's a giant hole in the ground that leads to what? Why is this like the center of the fucking thing? So there's all this stuff that's there. And this guy, he wrote a book, The Adventures of Little Baron Trump in such and so. And it's a little creepy like Donald Trump's son. And there's so Ingersoll Lockwood claims to be a time traveler in his stories, that he's a time traveler. He's visited the future. He's visited the past. He's seen the current era. And he wrote things that were quite close to what's happening. And this is deep down the rabbit hole. Once you hit this level, dude, this is like a breakthrough DMT trip. When you're at this point of seeing this stuff and thinking that it might be real, there might be something to it, even if like 10% of it is real, dude, it's the equivalent of having a breakthrough. It's that trippy of a change of perspective. And you got to ground yourself, because when you start going that far down, you start realizing that everything that you've been taught your whole life, you know, other than maybe how to tie your shoes, is a lie. You're taught that human civilization only goes back to Sumeria at the oldest, when in reality, there's more evidence that it goes back to, I don't know, 100,000, maybe 150,000 years ago. You know, there's way more evidence.
On my show yesterday about it. It could go back millions of years. Like, you know, there's Michael Cremo, who he has Forbidden Archaeology. He has footprints of humans that go back long ago. And, you know, the only thing that I can think that might be the cause of that is the, you know, the cataclysms. And we talked about this last night, is the resets. The fact that if you want to go deep down the rabbit hole, if you think about this, that like every time we have an awakening, we get reset, you know, and there have been even many resets throughout time that, like, you know, like the mud floods and the World's Fairs and stuff like that. They say that the World's Fairs were to kind of shape our perception on the way that they wanted us to think. So there's like many resets, then there's major resets. I'm not saying I believe it completely.
You have the Yuga cycle. Like in Hinduism, you have the Yuga cycle. You know, you have, so we're supposedly in Kali Yuga right now, which is the worst part. And that goes quickly. It says it's like 9,000 years long, but time speeds up during Kali Yuga. So 9,000 years of change happen in a short period of time. That's the real understanding. And
that's interesting you said about time speeding up too, because I feel like time is speeding up. I followed Art Bell. He wrote a book called The Quickening. He felt like society was speeding up based on like technology and the way that we're living our lives. Like, I don't know, that's kind of off subject, but I mean, it's interesting nonetheless, you know?
Well, remember, time is an illusion too. If my kind of metaphysics are correct, I know they are, but I can't prove that to you. You just have to take my word for it. If my view of reality is true, time is an illusion. You are not limited to this timeline. You're not limited to this time rate. There are meditations you can do where you can speed up and slow down your perception of time a little bit. I've gotten it so that I can't do it on command, but I've gotten it so that I can feel like a song takes twice as long or half as long. And what's interesting is, like, one of the things that researchers think that marijuana does is part of the reason it gets you screwed up is because it changes your perception of time just a little bit, so that's actually part of the high. And I've noticed, you know, like people in that using that, like a song can feel like it takes longer than usual, you know, or it can go quicker than usual. Now, what's happening there? Somebody in a more mundane mindset would say that, oh, they're just hallucinating and they're losing track of time. And okay, but we've established already that what I said before, that objective sense of reality is always through a subjective lens. So you don't know what the other person's really experiencing. You're just assuming based on what you see from the outside. So all I'm saying is that our understanding of reality has been polluted by nefarious people who don't want you to know what your ultimate potential is. Oh, are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, my phone. Hold on. Hold on.
That's
Let me
okay.
get back to where you. Wait. Okay. Yeah, there I am. Sorry.
That's okay.
Wait.
Okay, good.
I'm
Good.
here. Are you there? Can
That's
you
okay.
see me?
No, I see you just fine. I guess you turned off your thing or whatever. Yeah. Um, no, you're good. So, uh, what I'm basically saying, I forgot, I lost my train of thought there. Oopsie. What was I saying before
We're
we,
talking
before?
about time
Yeah, we're talking about time. Uh,
and like our perception of it based on like what your reality is and manifesting
yeah.
reality. I think that's what you were getting to.
I would probably get into that, but I'm kind of getting to like circular talk here where I'm like going back to what I said already. But the basic fundamental thing I'm trying to get at here is that everything you see is illusory. When I say it's illusory, I don't mean it has no consequence. I just mean that it is not fundamentally what reality is. You know, if you know, this ring is not a ring, it's just consciousness in the shape of a ring, you know, that kind of a thing. So time is the same way. And consciousness is not limited to time. So you can go anywhere in time, what we call time. You can go anywhere in that dimension with your mind. Your mind is non-local. Consciousness is non-local. And people don't realize this. They think their mind is in here, but in here is in your mind. If you really think about it, you know, we sit here going, oh, my brain is in my head and therefore I'm in my head. No, 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 no. You got that backwards. Your brain is in here. Your brain is in you. Your body is in you. You're not in your body. Your body is inside you. And once this shift of perspective starts to really happen, magic becomes easier because you're no longer attached to the physical lies. That's what I was getting at. So we've been indoctrinated into a limiting view, because go back to your Sumerian creation myths of humanity. They wanted human beings to be willing slaves. They wanted us to be a little bit above animals, that we could take orders and do what they wanted and, you know, whatever. And so they created human beings. That's one way the myth goes. I actually don't think that's what happened. I think that there was human beings, real humans. That's what the Anunnaki probably were. They were probably humans, and they tried to create a slave race out of other Homo erectus species. They tried to create a you know, sort of like the way today the elites are trying to use AI and dumb everybody down to make us drones. They're trying to do the same thing to us today that they did 12, 15, 40,000 years ago, whatever. So I think the Anunnaki, that's just my personal idea. I could be wrong here. I think that they were humans that created subhumans to be slaves. And something went wrong. That's just one interpretation. The other is that they were literally Nordic aliens that arrived here, decided to colonize this planet, needed a workforce, and so they grabbed the primates that were here, spliced them together, like interbred them, and then gave them a couple drops of their blood, of their DNA, to increase. Like Enki was like, well, they're too stupid. They're not smart enough to run our machines. Let's give them a few drops of Pleiadian blood or reptilian blood or whatever it was that they used from like whatever alien race. They gave that to us, and that made us intelligent enough to do that. And then we rebelled, you know, for whatever reason, and we developed our own Atlantean civilization, and then they got wiped out. I don't know, because I wasn't there. This is all speculation. I don't know.
I
But
think I think honestly, like I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, because I think it's not just like the works of like Zachariah Sitchin. You can look at like authors like Austin Henry Layard, Samuel Noah Kramer. These were like all ancient Assyriologists that kind of decoded the Sumerian tablets, and they came up with similar conclusions. Stephanie Dolly, Myths of Mesopotamia, and then a big one is George Smith. George Smith wrote the Chaldean account of the deluge, which were like the Chaldeans, you know. So all these people, I mean, if you read their works, they came up with similar conclusions to what you're saying. They might have not had Atlantis in there, but as far as about what the Sumerians did, it's pretty spot on, you know?
I mean,
I don't
don't forget,
know.
Atlantis is just our word for it. We don't know what it was called to them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
we just
exactly.
that's just what Solon told Plato. You know, we
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly.
We don't, and Plato just made the name up. Like, we don't know. Um, you know, so I will say that most of what I just told you, I didn't get that. I've never read a single paragraph of Zachariah Sitchin. I've never read any of these people. Before I ever heard of Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Robert Sepper, Uncharted X, even Bright Insight, I was a 13-year-old kid channeling this almost exact story from my spiritual work. I was going into trance and hypnosis, being past life regressed, and I was channeling all of this that I'm telling you in a different form, um, little different. Like, I'm adding to it now, is what I'm saying. The original version of it was kind of wild, and I never heard of Zachariah Sitchin or any of these people, and I'm recounting all of this in trance. I have friends writing it down. One of my friends was a big New Age nut at the time. This is back in the mid early 90s, okay? This kid was a fanatic for New Age and occult stuff. He went, when we'd ever go to the store, he'd buy every book on the shelf. He'd take every book out. He just would study this shit like it was going out of style. And we would record these things, and he would read them. And sometimes he'd research, and sometimes he already knew. He'd be like, you just literally channeled the Sumerian creation myth. You just channeled Neoplatonism. And I'd be like, I don't even know what you're talking about, because I'm just a retarded 13-year-old that the most magic I was exposed to, the most philosophy I was exposed to was like Jediism, you know, like from the movies. Like, I was Christian, and I liked Jedis and I liked Zen monks. I didn't know what they were about. I just thought they were cool, and I emulated them whenever I could. And I just spoke intuitively or channeled or past life regressed. And lo and behold, most of the stories I told were resonant with one part. I even said was, I think Zachariah Sitchin said, which was there was a planet between what we consider Mars and Jupiter, and Mars was actually orbiting, was once a moon of that planet, and that planet got destroyed or sent out of orbit or something. That's how we got our moon. That's how we got Atlantis. And because the people escaped from that planet and moved here. And dude, I didn't know that shit was other people had written about already. I never heard of these people. And so,
Well, I got a question. What do you think about the fact about the moon being like a possible reincarnation trap? Like it's like, you know, that it's like
yeah, like what David Icke says. I have a love-hate relationship with David Icke, because on the one hand, he preaches a very liberating message. And he's on the right side of history 9 times out of 10. But it's that 1 out of 10 that worries me.
Yeah.
Does he get misinformation? Does he believe in misinformation? Or is he a misinformation agent? Or is he like, just like flat earth? Like, there's some conspiracy theories that have been inserted by the CIA and other operatives to make the rest of them sound crazy. So like, I'm surrounded.
Or it could be something like maybe he gets some stuff right, but he's just not right about everything. And you know what I mean? Like,
that's where
I don't know,
because
like,
I don't feel like he's lying. I think he believes it himself.
yeah. You know, it's like the whole reptilian thing. Like, I believe there's reptilians. I watched his documentary, The Reptilian Agenda, and I was fascinated by that African shaman Credo Mutwa, who died, by the way. But I mean, it was just fascinating because they kind of got into like the whole politics of the country and how like the reptilians have like a stronghold on Africa, and it was just like I mean, it was 6 hours long. Like, you know
I
what I
didn't
mean?
watch that one, but I should, because when I was younger, I would have been all over it, because that fit right into what I believe. Because part of my past life regression was that a past life of mine, I was half reptilian or dragon. I wasn't quite sure. And half human or something like a human. And I was created. Well, I wasn't created. My lineage was created to sort of, shall we say, mend the fences, to make peace between the reptilians and the non-reptilian races. So me and people like me were descendants of a splicing that happened, and we looked human, but we had a large percentage of our DNA was not human, and so we had reptilian abilities, and they were rather negative. Mostly they were destructive, they were borderline vampiric, like they loved to feed on certain energies. But because of that hybridization, we weren't evil. We weren't like, oh, let's make everybody hurt. Instead, we got like the best of both worlds, you know. So that was a past life regression. Now, as I got older, and I decided that I was imagining things during those regressions because it didn't fit my paradigm of reality at all. I didn't believe it at all. I ignored it and I threw it away. This is why I don't talk about it, because even today I go, no, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like even with what I know now, I'm like, no, that can't be true. Okay. But as I'm learning now and accepting more and more about the ancient alien stuff, I'm going, what the fuck if that did happen? What if I did have a past life? Or maybe it's in my genetic memory or something of a version of myself that was spliced with what we call draconian or reptilian aliens. What if I was like half Nordic and half draconian, and that's how you get reptilians? I don't fucking know. All I know is that it's no longer quite so bizarre to me now. And so anyway, up until about a year ago, if you asked me if I believed in reptilians, I would have laughed in your face. But about 3 to 6 months ago, especially after making this paradigm timeline shift, I do believe it now. I don't know how much I believe it. I don't know what parts of it I believe, but I do believe it. Now, when you ask me about David Icke's reincarnation moon trap, I don't buy that. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't come from a good seed of truth. And what I mean by that is, if you look, there's a reason why you could argue that it might be true, because if you look at all of our enlightened religions, so Zen Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta, Gnosticism even, they all talk about liberation from the cycle of reincarnation. That's a big deal for them. But
I agree.
What they mean and what that's interpreted as are different things. Because you have to understand, when you ask a real high-level Buddhist what they mean by reincarnation, there are sects that believe in reincarnation like you die and then you take another body reincarnation, but they also understand that every moment is a reincarnation, because every moment you are incarnating in this body willfully. This is not, you don't have to be here. You don't have to live as this person. You could pull out, or you can be in this body but not of it. So they would say that an enlightened person has escaped the cycle of reincarnation, really the cycle of samsara. Okay, they can incarnate as many times as they want, but they've escaped the cycle of samsara, and they're no longer incarnating. They are present. There's a difference between being localized or present and being incarnated. So when they say you're incarnated, they mean you believe you're this body, this mind, this place, this time, and nothing else. And so that's why death is scary. Once you realize that you are the witness of this life, this body, and all of this, you're not this, you're just the witness of it. You're that too, but you're not exclusively this. That's the better way to say it. Then
yeah,
you're
it's
liberated.
like the Egyptians say. I was just going to say, like the Egyptians say, like, to escape the material world, they say the Ka is the material world and your Ba is your soul energy. So they want you to embrace the Ba and escape the Ka. I've heard. You know, I don't know if I'm right. But, yeah.
So let's correlate, because I love comparative mysticism and mythology. I love it. Like Joseph Campbell was one of my favorite people growing up. When you compare every world religion that is considered, you know, rational or whatever, they have a lot of similar contexts. The content is different. They call it the field of reeds in Egyptian myth. They would call it Elysium for the Greeks. You might call it Nirvana for the Buddhist. You might call it, I don't know, samadhi, or leaving the cycle of samsara. There's all these different words for it in every, heaven for the Christian. But they're always the same thing. And what are they talking about? Well, they're actually talking about the attainment of, in Hinduism, it would be like your bliss body. It would be you transcend the delusion until the blissful state of existence is your fundamental state. In other words, you no longer suffer reality. It is now a joy. It is now blissful to experience reality.
They call it the rainbow body too, I think, right?
Sure, there's a lot of words for it, but that physicalizes it. This is why I tend to
Yeah.
poo-poo when people get really like, oh, it's a rainbow body, it's an energy body, it's a this and a that. Those are metaphors. We take them so literally that that's why they don't work. Because you're approaching it like it's a body like this, when in reality it's a frame of mind. It's a frame of consciousness. It's a state of consciousness, and it's not a body you've got to enter or leave. You have to understand, when the ancients were saying body, in some cases they weren't talking about that. They were talking about a state of mind, you know.
Yeah, someone in your chat just said the ka is the body, the ba is the soul. So I thought the ka meant the material world, but same thing. The body is the physical, and the material is the physical. So you're like trying to leave the physical and embrace the soul. So that's all I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to disagree with your viewer, but
no,
I
don't
think
even remember, because
it can be seen as similar, right? It's like
it could be, yep. And every culture has a similar framework, right? So the other interesting thing is, in Egyptian lore, there's different schools of thought, but the one that I've found that I find interesting is that the afterlife wasn't permanent either. It was just a really long time. It was timeless. So let's say you were one of those unfortunate people that failed when they were weighing your heart against the feather, and you were eaten by Sekhmet. Sekhmet? No, Sobek. You're eaten by Sobek. They throw you to the crocodile. You were destroyed. But your essence, your consciousness wasn't. And you would go into the abyss and be purified and come back as a fresh new being with no memory of who or what you were, and you get to try again. It's like being destroyed, but it's really a new try. On the other hand, if you achieved that balanced state, you went to the field of reeds, which is bliss forever and ever. But that forever and ever isn't really forever and ever. It's actually just until you feel like coming back. And this is also like when Plato would say that reincarnation is real. In fact, most cultures believe in reincarnation. It's actually more of a Western modern thing, Christian thing to not. They took
it out. I heard it was actually in the Bible that at the when they did that, when they why can't I think of it, when the Constantinople, when they had the the meeting, they did. Sorry, I'm having a mind fuck right now. Like
it's okay.
We're
talking about a lot of high level shit, man. Don't worry about it.
when the Christians adjusted the Bible, and everybody knows about the event I'm talking about with Constantine, I think that was it. And they adjusted the Bible. They took reincarnation out. Someone will probably remember.
Was it constant? I think you're thinking of the Council of
Nicaea.
I don't remember.
Nicaea, yeah. The Council of Nicaea. Sorry, yeah.
Whenever they did it, I don't remember. I know what you're talking about, because the Christians at some point, they decided what Christianity was. And the way they did it was occult as fuck. Kabbalistic as fuck, if you know what I mean, New World Order as fuck. You have to understand, Christianity was the original New World Order, and it dominated the world for over 1,000 years. And then it couldn't fly anymore because they tried to conquer the world with religion and sword, and it failed because there's too many other people that were badass and said, fuck you, we're not adopting your religion, go to hell. So they failed at that. So they went economic, and they went technological, and they went alien, technology. They did it that way. And that's how we have this New World Order now that doesn't care about your religion as much. In fact, if they can get rid of religion, they will. They would rather you have none. But that's another story. So the ancients pretty much all believed in some form of reincarnation. I don't personally believe in the Buddhist or Hindu school of reincarnation thought, strictly speaking. I think that's a technology. I think that that's a way of approaching it. I think that's a way, but I don't think that that's what actually happens. I think the movie What Dreams May Come is probably the closest to reality that we can ascertain, in my opinion. If you ever watch that movie, I've always felt that that movie was real. I've always felt it, not literally real, but I mean that was closest to reality of every possible afterlife scenario. And if you haven't seen it, it's worth a watch. But every culture, if you go to maybe animistic, tribal cultures don't have it as much. I don't know. I'd have to do another sampling because I haven't done one of that, in a very long time. I do believe that a lot of animistic people believe in reincarnation in some form as well. The whole idea here is that a lot of people have to explain, if reincarnation is real, why don't we remember anything about it? Well, the understanding is either that it's so long between your lifetimes that you just forget, or that a condition of being reborn is that you have to surrender your memory for a while so that you can become this person, and then upon dying again, it will come back to you. The Hindu understanding I like here is because they say that you're still aware of all your memories. They shape your personality. They shape who you are, but you don't have conscious memory of it. And so we'll say, well, what's the difference between awareness and conscious awareness? Very simple. If I asked you the day that you learned the ABCs, you won't remember, but you do remember your ABCs, right? If I asked you if I asked you to remember the moment somebody taught you that fire was hot, you couldn't remember it, but you damn well know fire is hot. You know you learned it. So you are filled with things that you were taught or know that you don't remember where they come from. Is it that much of a stretch to understand that a lot of your personal makeup, your character, your personality, as much as it's influenced by this lifetime, could also be influenced by past lifetimes? I think, yes, I do think so. Because anybody who's peeked into their past life through regression practices, there's some uncanny things that happen. For example, and this is a really cool study. When you do like near-death experience and past life study, like,
oh, can I tell you, I've been regressed like 7 times. I've done a
cool.
couple live on my channel. Like
Cool.
I do, and I have other people regressed. I put them on my channel. Sometimes I think I'm very like I think it's very. I love past life regressions. And sometimes I wonder, do you think we're pulling from the Akashic field, like instead of like our own memories, that maybe we're pulling from this big pool of memories that are in like this database of
so
like
now you're entering
information.
non-dual territory. You're now entering non-dual territory, because when you understand what non-duality is telling you, there is no person. There's never been a person. A person is something you're watching. So Rob is not who you are. Your consciousness watching Rob. And that consciousness has come to associate itself with Rob as if that's all it is, because that's the game. That makes it fun. It's just like when you play a video game, you're for a little while, you're watching Link beat the shit out of monsters. And if you're having a good time, you feel like you're Link a little bit. You start to associate with the character. You can't help it. Oh no, I don't want to get, you don't, like when you're playing Legend of Zelda, do you say, oh no, I don't want Link to die? No, you say, I don't want to die. Every single person who plays a video game does that. Why do we do that? It's the same thing we're doing now. Your consciousness associating with this avatar, but you're not this avatar. So in a very real manner of speaking, you're correct. Not in the literal sense, because the Akashic field is just another word for multiverse, for cosmic mind, for cosmic memory. These are all just labels, but they represent something real. So you have to transcend the labels and understand the reality that the label is labeling. That thing that you're talking about is what modern, scientific philosophy would refer to as a hyperdimensional block time multiverse. It's hyperdimensional because it's more than just up, down, left, and right and time. It's a whole fuck ton of dimensions, possibly infinite, of space, at least 8, 9, or 10 dimensions of what we think of as time. or dimensionality of universe. There's so many, like if you look up 10th dimensional universe or 11th dimensional universe, it's a fascinating subject.
But okay, so I don't mean to interrupt you, but like when you talk like this, it makes me go back to think that we're in like a simulated reality, and
You
not
are
in a not you
just
know
not in a
not in a
computer.
hardcore sense, but like that it's the not in a computer sense, but that the world's definitely holographic. It's being generated by something,
It's
like
being
the
generated
you
by the
know
mind. We've already established that your experience of reality is a mental projection. This is not disputed in science at all. No cognitive neuroscientists, if I walked up to them and said, is this ring really what I see? They would say no. That's something your mind generates. And they know this because you can trick somebody's mind very easily into generating something that isn't there. In other words, there's a really great example of this. I'm not sure how you Google it, but there's this video that you can watch, and it has a dot going around in a circle in, I think, 20 or 12 positions. So it goes like blink, blink, and it just blinks on and off. And it's not a dot moving, it's a dot lighting up in 12 different positions around a circle. And so it lights up and goes off, lights off, and it just does this. It goes around, and it goes very quickly. And it goes around in a circle, blink, 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 blink. And so to you see it as a dot that's moving around in a circle. Every once in a while, they will trick you because they will actually turn off they'll reverse it. And you'll see a phantom dot appear where one does not light up. If you rewind the frame, it's not there, but your brain puts it there as if it was gonna be there, because your brain is predicting, your mind is predicting the next sequence. And so they can trick you with that. You can do it to yourself. If you do this enough and then stop, you can sometimes still see it. Like it's weird. Like you can do, this is what optical illusions are made of. So they know, even one from 30 years ago, a cognitive neuroscientist, if you ask them, do we see reality or do we dream reality? They're all going to agree that you dream reality. So we are all living in a simulation, whether it's a computer simulation or not. All of us are living in a mental simulation of reality. And when you apply non-duality to that, you now get mysticism, Neoplatonism, Hermeticism. You now get the ancients were right completely. We're wrong. Our modern world is the aberrant philosophy. That's the wrong, so this idea that your brain generates consciousness and that your brain generates thoughts, that is as backwards as thinking that leeches will cure syphilis. That's how backwards it is. And that's why it doesn't work. That's why they can't find out where consciousness comes from. That's why they can't seem to figure out how the brain forms thoughts, because your brain doesn't form thoughts. Your brain is a reflection or shadow of your thoughts. When you have a thought, you don't have a thought. A thought appears in consciousness, and your brain, is it the source of it, or is it just a reflection of it? Or
the brain's like the CPU. It's receiving information from an internet almost. Like it's like,
well, that's what they
like
tell you. That's what they tell you. But the problem with that is, have you ever seen your brain?
Yeah. No, I've never saw it. No,
Whose
that makes
brain
sense.
have you seen? Whose brain have you? This is where it gets hard, because people go, well, this sounds like solipsism. It's
That's
not.
a mind fuck. That's definitely a mind fuck. It's not a mind fuck, but it's a definitely interesting perspective. Like it is a mind fuck to a certain extent. It's like
Go ahead. Sorry.
it just is, because then you think, like, if I'm not seeing my brain, what am I seeing? A projection of what they want me to think my brain is.
Yeah. That's why I said before, have you ever seen your eyes? Do you know you have eyes for sure? And if I ask you that question, you're going to say, well, I've seen them in a mirror. Does that mean you've seen your eyes, or you've seen a mirror that has something that looks like eyes in it?
So how powerful is it that what we have inside, like our consciousness, like it has to be like insane, like to be able to do that. Like
that's God. You're God. You just are lost in a dream of being not God. That's what every ancient tradition tells you. Every single one, from Hermeticism on up, that is even Christianity. If you peel away the delusional corruption that is the religion of Christianity, especially if you go back to its Sumerian roots, you start to realize that these people have been telling us from the beginning that everything is a manifestation or appearance or form that consciousness is taking. That is why the ancient Greeks said, the ancient Greek mythology is probably the closest thing we have to an intact version of Proto-Indo-European mythology, meaning Sumerian, because there you can actually find many corollaries, and you can say, okay, so Zeus was Enlil, Poseidon was Enki, right? Hades was somebody else. Anu was Uranus. And you can find a lot of corollaries. And then if you go back, you have Egypt. They are very similar, but they have a completely different cultural modality. But they have many of the same archetypes. They just have different names, different appearances. They just were registering to them differently. But if you look, they repeat the same ideas many times over in different cultures. It's different, to be sure, and there's a lot of variation, but it's sort of like you can see where they were all from a parent culture, or a parent race, or a parent culture. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
they all have a version of primordial chaos or the void or something like it. All of them. Christianity does. All of them have the darkness, and then there was the voice. What does it say? Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Let's see. Genesis chapter 1. There we go. Book of Genesis. Okay. Depends on your version of it. This is the problem too, because the Christian Abrahamic Bible has been translated incorrectly so many times now that it's probably the least reliable source in the world. But in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. So right there, you have this image. So God had to create the heavens and the earth out of what? Out of darkness, out of the void. So God is the void. God is the nothing from which all things appear. It's not really nothing, though. It's everything, but it looks like nothing. Why is that? What does everything look like if you saw it all at once? What would if you could see the whole universe as fuck that. If you could see just your house, every part of it at the same time, what would that look like? It would be like a collage of madness, right? Now imagine, right, it would look like chaos. Now imagine if you saw the entire universe all at once. What would that look like? It would look like nothing, because everything would cancel out. It would just be a blinding nothing. You'd go blind. You couldn't see anything. That's why chaos looks like oblivion, looks like the void, looks like nothing. That's why they call it the gap. That's why consciousness is. Consciousness doesn't look like anything. It looks like everything. It looks like everything all at once.
You're really intelligent. I'm really digging this conversation. Like
I'm just obsessive. Thank you, though. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's interesting. Like it's a different way of looking at things for sure. Like,
this is the ancient way. This is the way people used to see things. And I know this because if you go to the Vedanta Society of New York and you listen to Swami, what's his name, who leads that congregation there in New York, he's a fantastic Vedic teacher, fucking beautiful, knows everything back to front. I could sit and listen to him for hours. He would agree with 80 to 90% of what I just said without any hesitation, because that is the default view of almost every mystical religion going back to antediluvian time. And it is the default understanding of all the advanced beings of the cosmos and all of the primitive people of this world. And probably animals get it too, but they don't have the intellect or the communicative skills to bring it to us in the way we would understand. They don't care about technology or any of that stuff because they already know that in their own way, however they know it, they know that all is one. You know how I come to believe this? Because if you research people taking shrooms and shit, they'll tell you that animals treat them different. It's like the animal's like, oh, you get it now. Like you're seeing it. And if you look at Buddhist scriptures, you look at things like this, the enlightened masters, animals treated them differently. The animals treated Jesus differently. He was an enlightened master, according to the mythology. If we believe it at face value, he was equivalent of an enlightened master of that culture. Animals treated him differently. this is unavoidable. I do believe, insofar as what I don't know for sure, I still believe the rest. What I do know for certain, and this is not up for debate with me, because this is not a thing that you can argue. This is something you can only realize or deny. That you are consciousness. You're not this person. You're not the body. You're not the mind. These are things that appear in consciousness. So in other words, they are forms consciousness takes. But you're not those forms. You are the consciousness from which they are formed. And that consciousness is not merely infinite, because that would limit it to infiniteness. Consciousness transcends all binaries, all dualities. It doesn't have an up and down, a left, a right, an in and out. It doesn't have a beginning. It doesn't have an end. It does not have any limitation, but it also doesn't not have limitation. It transcends all of these ideas. It is the witness of all of these ideas. It is the substance of all of these ideas. It's dream stuff. You ever hear that line? Baby, it's the stuff that dreams are made of. You ever hear that line? What are the stuff what do you think dream stuff is? Think about it. It's consciousness. So the ancients, Hollywood has been secretly telling you this, but they know you can't figure it out because most people don't look. They don't care to look. They're just having fun drinking the Kool-Aid. They don't know that you have been. This is why you can use pop culture and magic. This is why, watch a movie like The Dark Crystal. If you know your occult symbolism, if you know what's going on, Jim Henson and whoever helped him write that, I have to look it up and see who was behind it. I don't remember if he wrote the whole thing or if he had help, but he knew very deep occult stuff when he made Dark Crystal. One could even argue that something like that is real on some level. That whole movie is shadow work, the movie. If you understand what they're doing. Have you seen Dark Crystal by any chance? I want to make sure.
No, I don't watch a lot of movies. I just listen to podcasts, like,
okay.
Anymore. I kind of got away from it. I got to get back into it. Like, especially some of these more movies where like you can like see the esoteric stuff and the symbolism like you're talking about, because that's fun to do, you know?
Yep. And somebody, Ninurta, I love you, brother. You know exactly. Explorers is one of my all-time favorite movies. Yeah, you're right. But he was quoting the dude from Casablanca, wasn't he? With the stuff that dreams are made of. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. He was quoting the actor's voice, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, Humphrey Bogart, and from Casablanca. So I guess he was trying to. Ninurta can help me out here because I never saw Casablanca. I just assumed that came from Casablanca. Maybe it didn't.
It's one of those old movies. I think it's definitely like a Sinatra or Bogart or one of those old timer lines. Like it's I definitely think it came from there. What's he say? It's hard for me.
Oh, the Maltese Falcon. I'm sorry, it was the Maltese Falcon. I'm wrong. But I saw it in Explorers, and Ninurta's right. I actually got that from Explorers. So Ninurta got me on that one, 100%. And by the way, Jockster says they love your lighting. I agree. That is interesting. The mix of orange and green. That's an interesting combo.
I'm running like 4 different lights. When I'm on my computer, it looks completely different. It'll look like blue and red. But then like, since I'm on my phone, maybe it projects it different. Or like you said earlier, it's the way that we see it. Anyway, I'm running 4 lights. Sorry, I smoked weed in the middle of our podcast now. So now I'm like going Ted. I'm like, duh, but I love this conversation, man. It's like, it's so enlightened. Like, I see why you're fans, like, this was amazing.
Well, this is what I do. This is my passion. In fact, I feel ill if I don't bother somebody about it once a week, Yeah. This is like, I was joking with a friend of mine today during a mentor class, and we're sitting here talking, and I asked him, I'm like, have you ever gotten, how should we say, couch lock stoned while watching the movie Heavy Metal? And he's like, no. I'm like, you need to do that. And I'm like, that's like my Joe Rogan DMT question. Like, Joe Rogan's always like, have you ever smoked DMT? Well, my version of this is, have you ever watched Heavy Metal while completely blitzed and stoned? And if you haven't, you should, because it's a fun experience. But anyway, let me see here. Hold on. You know what? I have been ignoring the chat tonight because we've been having just so much fun talking. So guys, I want you guys to give our now stoned guest some questions, because he's interviewed a lot of people, and as usual, I'm talking too much. And yeah, give him some questions about, like, you know, like what's the craziest story or something. Like, give him some questions while we still got some time. How much longer do you want to go, Rob? Do you want to go a lot longer, or are you good for
I
just a
can't
little
go
bit?
that longer because I have an early podcast in the morning. And
Okay.
my phone, I have, I'll tell you, hold on. I have 10% left on my phone, and I'm using my phone for this because we couldn't get my computer to work, guys. So
Yeah.
sorry. But I mean, like, but I can answer a couple questions. Like, we can go like 15 minutes or something if
Okay.
that's cool.
So let's go for 15 minutes. And I also, you know, we've just been having fun talking. Sometimes when we do these things, we're not very professional. We're just hanging out and having a good time. One of the reasons I want to bring Rob on, and I want to bring you on more often, Rob. I'd like to have you on regularly, actually. You're a fun guy to have on. I think you have good questions. I think you have good information, which I've just been monopolizing the time like an asshole as always. But
You know, I think it was a great discussion. You know, like we both like learned. You know, it's interesting, right? Like I've never turned down a conversation about our reality because I hear a lot of stuff every day, but I love like talking about what are the gears to our reality, like what makes us tick, like you know, because I know I don't find this. The people that say that life's a coincidence are very like dumb or misinformed. Like, there's no way this is a coincidence. Like, we have like speakers for ears. We have cameras for eyes. We have a brain that's like a computer. Something elaborate put this together. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and that's, I can't explain it as elegantly as you, but something with a huger purpose designed humans for something that's outside of me. I don't even want to try to understand it, but it's like a gift to be born here. And especially to do what I'm doing. Like, I do
you've definitely
podcasting full
chosen to be
time.
incarnated here. You definitely chose to incarnate here at this time to witness the events that are going on. Of that, I am convinced. There is, you know, those people we call NPCs, they just stumbled into this. A lot of us intentionally incarnated here either to witness, participate, interact, interfere, whatever. You can call them star seeds, you can call them whatever the fuck you want, but a lot of us are here for a reason, to witness this. This is like sightseeing for the soul. We're here to watch this species either go off the cliff into extinction or achieve the golden path. I think that's what's coming next. So, but yes, and the great majesty of all of this is that ultimately you're it. You're not limited to this. You can be, do, and see anything. You just have to have patience and realize that this is a dream, and you can make this dream lucid anytime you're ready. Until you're ready, you can't. You know, it's just like waking up. You can't wake up on purpose. You can only wake up when you're ready, or when you set an alarm. You know, so yeah, I mean, Inerta is saying the brain is a holographic computer that the mind uses. That is, I don't disagree with that. I would augment it, or I would say don't put. Here's what I would say: do not put causal machinery where consciousness is. By that I mean, don't assume that because it looks like a causal machine where when you push that domino, it all falls down. It just looks that way. So
it's not a computer, is what you're saying. It's not
a computer. No. In fact, I know it's not a computer because I do my best thinking when I'm not thinking. Most people, if you ask them to solve a question, they have to think words, pictures, numbers in their heads. Nothing that I've ever come to that I talk about was arrived at by talking to myself with a lot of words. When I was talking, I was trying to frame what I was understanding in language for others, but I already understood it.
Going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's what remote viewers do. They tap in,
correct.
They let their conscious mind go. They're programmed to let their conscious mind go and let their subconscious mind kick in. If they want those like instantaneous gut answers, like
downloads,
they don't want the thought about answers, because when you put too much thought into it, that's when the ego comes in and starts to trick you.
You're right on every single point. 100% correct. So I don't, most of my most brilliant shit that I say, I don't know I'm going to say it next. I have no idea what I'm going to say next. It just, and it comes out. And I go, hey, that sounded pretty good. But it's based on a knowing, a gnosis, not intellect. So the intellect is slow. The intellect has bandwidth. Consciousness does not. Consciousness can instantly realize anything. You just have to be open to it. And you can't be open to it if you're chattering in your mind. Some of the most brilliant ideas I've ever had, like if you ever, why do people say Eureka? Because they don't add it together in their head. It just clicks. They intuitively have a spontaneous realization and suddenly they know everything that they needed to know. That is how it always happens for the big stuff. The little stuff, like if you're solving a math equation, 2 + 2 = 4, you've got to do the numbers until you learn the answer. Think of it like this for a moment. Remember what I said initially. There is consciousness, and then there's consciousness's idea of itself, which is the multiverse. And consciousness knows the entire multiverse from front to back omnisciently right now. There is nothing that consciousness doesn't know. Consciousness, the divine, does not need to think. It already knows everything. So, in other words, God doesn't have to say, I got to do the calculation for 1 + 1 to figure out what 2 is. It already knows that 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't need to do the math. Just like a 12-year-old who's been drilled with their multiplication tables doesn't need to do the numbers on their hands to know that 5 × 5 = 25. They just know. They've memorized it. It's intuitive to them now.
So wait, this makes up a good point. I was thinking, going back to what we were talking about past life regressions, when you have that knowing of, like, to say you think you were Alexander the Great in a past life, are you pulling from like something that you would deem as your own memory, or the multiverse's memory that anybody could have had? But when we say no, and I know when I say anybody, you're looking at it from a more abstract perspective. I'm looking at it from a more physical perspective. But when you leave this body, your consciousness again, so do you have your own record of memories that you've had from past lives, or is it just random?
The correct answer is both. Yes, I do. But the correct answer is both and neither. So the question is, do I have? Well, what do you mean by I? Who's asking the question? Is consciousness asking the question? Because if consciousness is asking the question, then consciousness has been everybody. Consciousness has been you. Consciousness has been me. This is the Advaitin understanding, is that the same I that's asking the question in your body is listening to the question in this body. You and I are the same consciousness. There's no separation between us, only ignorance of our unity. And that ignorance of our unity is what makes us feel like individuals in separate relationship to one another. However, we are all ultimately the same consciousness. And this is also why we have a sense of individuality, because there's only one consciousness. So that one consciousness, when it's incarnate as you, thinks I'm the only one, because it is the only one. But that consciousness is also me, and it's my wife, and it's the dog. And it's having an experience of me, the wife, the dog, the bird, the alien at Alpha Centauri. It's having the experience subjectively of all of these people individually, one at a time, multiple at a time. Time doesn't exist. That's the great mystery. When you realize time doesn't exist, the same being can be everybody at the same time, because time is an illusion. This is why it's so wild. Imagine being reincarnated an infinite number of times as every living thing that ever was, including yourself and every version of yourself. All of that is there. You can access any of it. In fact, it's a little scary. At that point, you're starting to go off the deep end, and you got to ground. If you don't ground, you go, oh shit. So, but here's the thing. There's one consciousness, but that consciousness takes the form of many minds and many bodies and many worlds and many dimensions and many universes. It takes the form of those things and can isolate its own sense of self within any piece of it at any time, or multiple pieces at the same time, or different times, or whatever. Remember, time is an illusion. So this is where it breaks down for our mind. We can't think that way. You can know it the same way I'm saying it to you. You can know it. This is what's called gnosis. That is transcendental gnosis. When you enter those ridiculously deep states of transcendental meditation, You get the realization. It's not an intellectual realization. It's not an argument that you agree with. It is a self-evident realization. Holy shit. It's not solipsism. It's worse than that. It makes solipsism look silly. You are it. I am it, but we're the same it. We're all the same it, having separate experiences through ignorance, not through actual separation, through forgetfulness. Think of it this way. Do you remember exactly what you were doing 3 years ago at this exact moment? Do you remember what you were doing, thinking, and seeing at this exact? Nobody does. Do you have any doubt that you were there? No, you don't. You know you were there 3 years ago at this moment exactly. You just don't have any memory of it. So when someone says, why don't I remember being D.H. Thorne if we're all the same consciousness? That's my answer. For the same reason you don't remember 3 years ago at this moment, you don't remember being me, and I don't remember being you.
Well, here's one that's even wilder to think about. I get deja vu sometimes. I get like really bad deja vu, like where it's made me think that like I've lived this exact life before and I've made bad choices and I've come back to like, but something is telling me that I keep doing it over and over again, like that I'm not getting something right. Like, and what's weird about that is that I have a very strong resonance with that. Like, and you say, people say like, well, does that resonate with you or do you think it's just bullshit? No, I have a strong resonance that I've been myself many times like,
already,
it's weird.
I don't think you're wrong. That might be true. Now, remember, let's back it up and let's remember both and neither. So yes, there is a you, there is a mind you that is exclusive, but then there's consciousness, which is not. Now, the understanding that I have, whether it's right or wrong, it's my current model of reality. And a good mystic would tell you, no model is true, they're useful. There's a difference between truth and usefulness. Usefulness requires accuracy, but not truth. So my model, I believe, is accurate, but it's not truthful. So my model says that there's an infinite multiverse, and in an infinite multiverse, there's an infinite number of Roberts, each of them just a little different. It could be literally just one atom or molecule is in a slightly different position, but there's an infinite number of you. And it is your prerogative to witness them all sooner or later. You might actually reincarnate as Robert countless times. But here's the thing you got to get out of your head. It's not about doing things the right way or the wrong way. It's about making choices such that when this adventure is over, you've gotten everything you wanted to get out of it. Maybe maybe you're trying to learn of your true nature. This is why you are so curious about aliens and magic and all of this stuff. It's not because, you're a truth seeker. And anyone who's a truth seeker is on the enlightenment pathway, whether they know it or not. Someone who just sits there and says the whole point of life is to drive a fast car, get laid, and have money, they're not on an enlightenment pathway. They're not a truth seeker. They're a cow. They're a sheep. They're food. They're almost an NPC. They're lower. And I'm not saying that in a negative, although part of me does, because I have a little arrogance in me. But they are not on that pathway. But anybody who is interested in finding out the mysteries and questioning things is on the enlightenment pathway. They're on the path of the seeker. And it is your destiny to find out. It says in the Bible, he shall seek shall find. If you seek the truth, you will find it. It may take you 1,000,000 lifetimes. You might have to be Robert 1,000,000 times, and each time a little different. And each time you run into a different cast of characters that teaches you something new. But eventually you realize you're not being taught anything. You're being reminded of something you forgot. D.H. Thorne is not telling you a new idea. He's telling you something you already know but forgot. That's why it resonates. You go, this sounds like there might be some truth to this. It's not because your brain is putting these things together and saying, that adds up, that makes sense. No, they feel right. They when I say feel right, I don't mean emotionally feel right. They feel right psychically. They resonate with you. There is a truth to it that you recognize. You recognize the truth, you don't learn the truth. You already know the truth, you've forgotten it. So as you hear the truth, you start to align with it. That's what yoga is. Yoga is an alignment with what is. Yoga, it's a form of yoga, or it's a form of, what is it, darshan? In Hinduism, there's a word for it. I forget if it's darshan or maybe it starts with an S. There's a practice. There's different kinds of practices. You know, there's practices that are worshipful. There's practices that are philosophical and contemplative. And then there's practices that are mystical. And they're all ways of finding out the truth. And when you find out the truth, it's like waking up in a dream. This is why that says reality is a dream, make it lucid, because enlightenment is making reality lucid. You're lucid at that point. You know what it is. You know it's a dream. And you know that there's nothing that isn't a dream. And that realization changes your life in a way that you can't ever come back from. And that's scary for people. It's a red pill. You can't go back in the matrix the same way. Yes, you can go back in, but you can no longer live in it. And once you realize once you realize how many layers this matrix has, it never stops. And it can make you a little crazy because you realize that you're the only one maybe for 100 miles that sees it like that. And that everybody's on a different level of awakening and no one quite gets it. Not even me.
You know what we got to get into next time is I'd like to hear like some of your your shamanic journeys, because I'm guessing you went on a couple through magic or whatever, or however you did it, to see like these dimensions and stuff. Like if you have, you know, I don't know if you have, but I'm guessing you have. I'm guessing
some
you
of this
went on
stuff I don't
journey.
like talking about for several reasons. There's an old traditional understanding that you don't make the seeker that's learning, like the beginning seeker, you don't get them too interested in the bells and whistles and fireworks, because then they think that that's what it's about. So if I told you that, yes, I've doing meditation, I mean, I do admit some of this stuff, but I don't go into the depth of the detail that I could. Because if I did, I think that would give people the wrong impression of what to expect. If I told you that in deep transcendental meditation, I have literally achieved psychedelic effects just through meditation and entered a multiversal frame of mind and witnessed multiple dimensions and incarnated in them temporarily and then came back and awakened back in my regular self, how does that help you? All that does is give you a cool ass story that you want to emulate. You want to go experience that, because now it's experience oriented. You want to have the experience of the multiverse, not enlightenment. But I'm here to tell you that without some level of enlightenment or lucid dreaming of reality, those alternate realities are wasted on you. They're just a cool story, bro, but they're not real yet. They don't hit. When you have a non-dual awakening and then you transcend into other realities, they hit so much harder, because then you realize you're doing this all the time. Every moment of your life, you're slip sliding through the multiverse, becoming a new person every millisecond, every femtosecond. And you can steer that any way you want. That kind of stuff, you can't tell the guy at McDonald's about that. They can't relate to it. You become another kind of being. You stop being exclusively human. You're still witnessing through a human, but you're no longer a human. You are something else, something that there is no word for. You're it, your consciousness, your God incarnate. You're the hand of God. You're the avatar of God, but you're not a human anymore. You're certainly not the person you were a moment ago. But the person who just has a psychedelic trip and no metaphysical training beforehand is just having a recreational experience. They haven't quite transcended. All of those psychonauts that have no spirituality, and by the way, if you look, most of them do have a spirituality, thank goodness. But all those people that get slipped a Mickey at a party, they get slipped some salvia or something, or they get slipped some DMT at a party, when they have that first, balls to the wall trip, they don't know what the fuck to make of it. It's a wild experience. They might feel that cosmic unity, but they don't have a sophisticated realization yet. In a way, they've been done a disservice, because those things should be a confirmation or an aid if you're having a hard time breaking through. They should never be your introduction, because that's not helpful. That's like taking a little child who doesn't know how to swim and say, here, swim, motherfucker, and throwing them in the deep end of the pool. That's not how you start somebody. You can do it. I'm not saying it never works. I'm just saying that's the irresponsible way. The correct way is to be like, did you know that all is one? Did you know that consciousness is fundamental? Well, I don't know. That maybe it sounds right. Okay, that's fine. How about we do these meditations? Okay, you start to feel it in meditation. When I say feel it, I don't mean physically or emotionally. It's a realization. You start to realize it in meditation, but it's still not, you're like, I believe it and I kind of know it, but I'm having doubts. Okay, here, swallow this whole entire handful of shrooms and now tell me what happens. Because we don't live in a world where someone can dedicate 8 hours a day, 7 days a week to deep meditation like a Buddhist monk in a temple somewhere. We've got jobs, we've got lives. We need to take a more shamanic path, like you just said. But that shamanic path needs an introduction. It needs initiation. And if you don't have initiation and you just have wild experiences, you think that that's the truth, but that's still illusion. And as a mystic, I'm like a midwife. I'm trying to get you to give birth to yourself, to realize who you are. And once you do that, the multiverse is yours when you're ready for it. You know it is. And
that's fascinating.
And I think I've done this about a kabillion times in different lifetimes. This is just my latest adventure of doing this. And I've been warriors, I've been mystics, I've been poets, I've been soldiers, I've been everything you can imagine. And so have you. And you've been more than that, because you've never been this one person. This is just one mind reincarnating over and over again. There's an infinite number of minds over and over and over again. There's no end to this Russian nesting doll. It goes on forever. So you can say, I am Rob, and Rob is reincarnated as a whole bunch of people. Okay, that's true too. Both are true and neither are true. You have been Rob many times. You've also been D.H. Thorne and you don't remember it. And that is where a lot of people, that's a bridge too far. That's why we have religions that talk about individualized souls, because people, their egos don't let go. We don't let go of our identity very easily. Even I don't. And I've done it. That's why I wear this ring that's got a skull on it. I wear this. This is one of my main rings. I've been wearing it for years. The first time I don't wear this because it's edgy and cool. That's just one reason. That's just an aesthetic reason. The reason I wear this is to remind myself, I am not D.H. Thorne. I am not Daniel. I'm not the guy married to my wife. My ego died several times now and was reborn several times. So this is my symbol to remind me that I died, not in a car accident, in deep transcendental states. I know what it's like to die pretty well. Pretty well. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be scared when it happens. It just means I won't suffer it. It'll be like, oh shit, okay, cool. I did this once already. I know what's happening.
Shit, my phone's down to like 3%. I'm going to die here.
Yeah, you're going to die. Your phone's about to have ego death.
Yeah. But this was amazing, man. This was so much fun. This was awesome.
Well, let's give everybody, you got deplatformed. Let's do another. Are you free next week? You want to do another stream next week or something? I
gotta check and see what my schedule is, because I schedule a lot of shows, but I might be able to.
Okay, because my purpose was, I felt bad. You got deplatformed, and I wanted to help you. And here I've been just telling about my theories all day. So you got deplatformed for saying some no words or whatever off of YouTube, and you had to start a Rumble thing. And you have a lot of cool people that come on your podcast.
Well, I only have like 800 subscribers on Rumble, but I've been building on Rumble and Rockfin for a while, because I knew that I could potentially, because I've had YouTube strikes before. They've come after me before, then they go away, and now this is the latest iteration of that. So it's just like trying to deal with it and build your platform and other spots. Like I do audio too, like my podcast is on all audio platforms and all that stuff. But it's like, I don't know. I try to
So
be
do me
as
a
many
favor.
places as I can.
Whenever you do a podcast, put it in my Discord under shameless plugs. Let's get you some more people to listen to your work and your interviews, because the little bit I've listened to, you're a good interviewer. You ask good questions. So let's elevate you. I do feel bad because I felt like we just had a mentor class instead. It wasn't really like I interviewed you, but I think we should do that next time. We'll get you to like tell us some of the coolest stuff you've heard, from your guests, and we'll do a whole show on that. Would be cool. So
That sounds good.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. So link your Rumble account on my Discord somewhere, or send it to me personally, and I'll get it out there. Let me find it before you get. By the way, guys, if he disappears, it's not his fault. His phone's dying. It's my fault. I'm a jerk. But let me see. You can even post it in the chat if you got it up.
or you can share my YouTube. It's just YouTube at Typical Skeptic or Typical Skeptic Podcast everywhere.
Okay.
It's real easy to find. On YouTube, I have a little bit longer of a name just to try to attract more, to get the algorithm to trick, I think it's in YouTube, it's like Typical Skeptic, UFO, Paranormal, and Sci. But I mean, everywhere else, it's just Typical Skeptic Podcast. I'm on Rumble, Rockfin, Amazon Music, Spotify. I don't know.
Yeah, you got a lot of. Do you have a LINKTREE?
I do, but I don't use it. I should.
Yeah. You know what? I found your links here. I'm gonna post them right here. Boop, and I'm gonna pin it. Boop. That should be all of them. Hopefully they work for everybody. Yeah. So, all right, I'll put them on my Discord too. So let's get you some attention. I think, we had a weird start. Otherwise, I think I would have been more on the ball. So let's get you on again soon before my busy season at my other job starts up. And let's get you really going, and get you some attention from my community a little bit, which looks big, but it's not that much bigger than yours, if I'm being honest. So, oh, we lost him. His phone died. All right. That's that. I will message him. Guys, thank you very much for listening to me talk at somebody for another 2 hours. I appreciate you all so much, and I know Rob will too. So I will give him our best, and thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm going to end this abruptly now because now I feel bad. I will be back another time. He died. He had ego death. Good night, everybody.